for today. This is Unit 2. We're starting our new unit. And let me tell you guys, this unit is our #1 most important unit. The whole year, this is the #1 most important unit because this is the building block unit for algebra class next year. It's your building block units for Algebra 2 in high school. You're going to need this unit for the rest of your math career. So it's our #1 most important unit. It's also our largest unit. So we split it up into 3 tests. That's how big it is. It's going to have to be split into 3 tests. Test 2A is going to be just out of the expressions. Test 2B is going to be for the equations, Jacob. Test 2C is going to be for the inequalities portion. It is also our hardest unit. So you want to make sure you're really focusing. You guys have done really great with the first unit itself. This is our hardest unit. It's biggest. It takes the longest. It is our most difficult. We will keep referring back to this unit all year. Even when we're done with this, we reference it all year because it's material that you're going to use. You're going to use it even in geometry. Okay? So you need to have a good comprehensive understanding of this unit. All right, so we're starting with expressions. Today's lessons are on the parts of the expression and evaluating the expressions. So like I said before, you need those 4 colors. The first thing that we're going to identify is a term. What we mean by the word term. So our first definition is the word term. It means a number or a variable or a product or quotient involving numbers and variables. And it's usually separated by addition and subtraction signs. So if you have more than one term, those 2 terms or 3 terms or 4 terms will be separated by plus or minus signs. So in this example here, the 6x plus 2, we have 2 terms. We have 2 terms here. Our first term is the 6x. That is our first term. The 6x is going to be our first term. Okay, I'm going to put a squiggly right here. This plus 2 is our second term. Notice I'm including the plus sign. It's not so important that I'm including the plus sign. But if that was a minus sign, that would be very important to include it. See, when we're talking about pluses and minus, and we separate them into terms, those pluses and minus become positives and negatives. So when you're talking about them as a separate term, this means positive 2. If it said minus, it would mean negative 2. Your sign, your plus signs and minus signs belong to the number or term that it is in front of. So what I mean by in front of, when you read from left to right. So is that plus sign in front of the 6x? No, in front of it would be before it, wouldn't it? Before is the same thing as in front of. That plus sign is in front of, or it's before the 2. So it belongs to the 2. It means you are adding a 2. So it's a positive 2. It's very important to understand what the sign belongs to, which value it belongs to. All right, let's move on to the next one. Pink. Take out your pink. Coefficient. When we hear the term co, so here we go. Co-teacher. We have 2 teachers in here, don't we? So co-teaching means to teach together. We pair together and teach. Coexist. Co-worker. Co-workers. You work together. Coexist. You exist together. Coefficient means it's a value that exists or is paired with the variable. Okay, a coefficient is a number value that is paired up by multiplication with the variable. They are attached together, physically attached together. They are side by side. So your 6 in this case is your coefficient. So we're going to put a nice, lovely highlighted box around the 6 in pink. The 6 is the coefficient. Did I highlight the x? No. So is the x part of the coefficient? No. The only thing that is a coefficient is the number. The number is the coefficient, not the letter. The number 6 in this case is the coefficient. The letter, the x, is going to get highlighted in blue. What do we call a letter? A variable. Good. Some of you have already heard these terms before. The letter is called the variable, so highlight variable in blue. Variable means an unknown value, and we typically refer to it as a letter. So it could be X, it could be R, W. There are a couple of letters we don't tend to use, like we don't tend to use O. Why do you think we don't use O? Zero. It looks like a 0. We don't tend to use the letter T. Why do you think? It looks like a plus sign. Okay, and now that we have the variable X, we don't tend to show multiplication anymore with the X sign. We show it with a dot, or we show it side by side. Remember, if we look back at our invisible math, those 4 ways to write our multiplication, one of them is to put them side by side. Okay, that's when you have a number and a variable involved. Obviously, don't put numbers side by side. You wouldn't say 3 times 6 is 36. But when it's a number and a variable, you put them side by side. That's part of our invisible math. That means multiplication. This means 6 times x. Okay? So that's our variable. The letters are always going to be your variables. All right, your constant. Your constant, we're going to highlight that in the green. The constant is the number that is added or subtracted. It is just a plain number value that is added or subtracted. And notice I'm going to highlight the sign. I'm going to highlight the addition sign because I want to make sure that I know that that isn't just 2, it is a positive 2. It is a positive 2. So I'm highlighting the sign as well. So we've got our terms. 6x is a term, so if you want to write that off to the side, 6x is the first term. Positive 2 is the second term. Okay, writing those off to the side so that you know 6x is a term. Positive 2 is a term. They are separate terms from each other. It's important to know which terms are separated too, because when you do combining of like terms, which is what we'll start next week, you need to know which ones are your terms. Okay? All right, let's move on down to the first example, identifying our terms, identifying our coefficients, identifying our variables, and identifying the constants. That's what we're going to be working on right now. And I'll come back to this if you need it, those of you who are still copying a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at this first example here. We want to identify the terms. So starting on the left, what is our first term? Raise your hand and tell me your first term. Go ahead, Maya. What? No, the first term. What's the first term? So here, like for example, here, let me give you the example again. Our first term is 6x. That's our first term. Okay, so what's our first term here? The 8x. So 8x. So in orange, go ahead and write 8x. That's your first term. Okay, now I'm going to separate it now with a little semicolon. Okay, I'm going to put a little semicolon here to separate it. That's my first term. So now I'm going to cover 8x up. Covered it. What's my next term? Julie? No, we're not using words. We're not using the words, we're using numbers, right? Kobe. Not the 8. Look at what I covered. Look up here. What's left, guys? What do you see? Negative 4. Not just 4. Not just 4. Negative 4. That's what I told you guys. Right here, see that plus 2? That plus 2 becomes a positive 2. That minus 4 becomes a negative 4. Those signs, those plus signs and minus signs mean something. They are not just operations anymore. They are signed values now. If you drop that minus sign and just say 4, then that means that you're adding a 4, not subtracting. It changes the problem. Be very careful about that. All right, now that I have my terms written out, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cover up my expression. I'm going to ignore it. I'm only going to focus on the terms. I've got 8x. I've got a negative 4. Out of these terms, which value up here is called the coefficient? Which value is called the coefficient? Con? 8. The 8 is the only value up here that would be called a coefficient. Just the 8, not the x, not 8x, it's 8. What value or term or something up here is called the variable? Which one is the variable? Melanie. Look at what the variable means. The variable is usually written as a what? A letter. So which one is it? The x. Okay, the x is our variable. The x is our variable. What is the constant? Which one is just a number by itself? It doesn't have a variable paired with it. Justin? Negative 4. So negative 4 is our constant. You have to keep the signs with you. Okay, this was an easier one. Let's move on to one that's a little bit more difficult. But again, do what I do. Start at the beginning, and when you finish with one, cover it. Go to the next, cover it, go to the next, and keep going, okay? So let's start with our terms. Looking here at problem number 2, what's the first term? 3. Thank you, Noah. Our first term is a 3. So I'm going to cover the 3. Am I going to cover the minus sign? No. Not going to cover the minus sign. I'm just going to cover the 3. What's my second term, Jacob? Negative 2x. So I'm going to write negative 2x. That's my second term. I'm going to cover the negative 2x now. What's my next term, Julie? 9. A positive 9. Okay, what's my next term, Nyla? Positive 7y. Cover the positive 7y. What's my last term, Chloe? Negative 13. See, it's a lot easier now, right? You make some mistakes on the first one, but then you learn from it. And now it's like, oh, okay, now I get it. All right? So now here's all my terms. I don't need to focus on the expression anymore. Let's just focus on the terms that we see here. What numbers up here are coefficients? Give me one coefficient right now. Antoine? Not just 2. Negative 2. Negative 2. Negative 2. That's one of the coefficients. What's another coefficient up here? Hatim? Does the 9 have a variable attached to it? No. Ethan? Does a negative 13 have a variable attached to it? Remember, we said coefficients have to be attached to a variable. They coexist with a variable. So what's the only other number up here that coexists with a variable? Matthew? The 7. So not the y, just the 7. The 7 coexists, or it's attached, it's coing with the y, with the variable. Okay, so negative 2 and a 7. Negative 2 and the 7. What's my variable? Jacob? X. Do I have any other variables? Melanie? Y. All right, my constants. My constants are the ones that don't have a variable with it. My constants are the numbers that don't have a variable. Ella, what's one of them? 3. What's another one? Julie? 9. What's another one? Kaya? I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? But I don't see a 13 up here. I don't see a 13 up here. What do I see? A negative 13. I see a negative 13. Negative 13. Don't forget those negative signs, okay? Don't want to drop those negative signs. All right, let's go to the back. Flip it on over to the back. Want to make sure that we see those signs and those numbers, okay? All right, so on the back, this is what you're going to be using for your digital learning day tomorrow. What we're doing here on the back is what you'll be doing tomorrow on iExcel. It's very, very easy. It's going to be very, very easy. Should not take you more than 15 minutes because I know that everybody's got a whole bunch of assignments they'll be posting, so I'm trying to get ours down to about 15 minutes, okay? So for here, when you're saying they evaluate, and evaluate an expression means that you are working out to get an answer, working it through to get a final number. So here they give us 2 and then parentheses x plus 3. That's quantity of x plus 3. And then off to the side, they're saying, hey, x is equal to 4. So what they're having us do is what's called substitution. So if I say, hey, guys, tomorrow you're going to have a substitute. What does that mean? What does it mean when I say you're going to have a substitute tomorrow? Kaya? Someone who's filling in for me, right? Someone who's going to replace me for the day. So that's exactly what we're doing here. We're going to substitute. We're going to substitute, which means we're going to take that value of 4 and we're going to fill it in for wherever we see any values of x. Anywhere we see an x, we're substituting a 4 in its place. Now, does that mean that every number up here is going to change to a 4 as well? No. The only one that's going to change to a 4 is that x. So I'm going to highlight that x in pink. That's the only one that's changing. Everything else is going to stay the same. It's going to stay a 2 on the outside of the parentheses. We're still going to have a plus 3 on the inside of the parentheses. So we have the problem 2 times the quantity of 4 plus 3. So order of operations. What do we do first with order of operations? In this problem, Hatim? The box or the parentheses, right? The box or the parentheses. You always do parentheses first. So I'm going to put my order of operations up here. Parentheses, please. Everybody's heard it as please, excuse my dear Aunt Sally, right? Please is parentheses. Thank you. You can just put it right there. Yep. Excuse, that's the E. That stands for what? Exponents. Exponents is the E. My dear, that's multiplication and division, but it's whichever one comes first. So I'm not going to put M in front of D because then a lot of times people think you have to do multiplication before you divide, but it's not. You are leaving the exponents and you are gravitating to either one of those based off of whichever one comes first. So if a division problem comes first, you divide. If a multiplication problem comes first, you multiply. And then the same thing for addition and subtraction. It's whichever one comes first. Once you have finished all multiplication and divisions and you're only left with addition and subtraction, you either add if it comes first or you subtract if it comes first. That's the order of our operations. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So in this case, we have parentheses that we have to do first. I'm going to go ahead and circle that. I'm going to do 4 plus 3. What's 4 plus 3, guys? 7. Good. All right, so we get a 7. And then, again, what does this mean? If I have 2 in parentheses 7, what operation is that again, guys? Multiplication. We are multiplying those two numbers together. And what is 2 times 7? 14. Now, here is a really cool thing about your calculators. Really neat trick about your calculators is that if you were to go ahead, take your calculator, and you type that expression in exactly as you see it. So you type in a 2. Everybody can see my 2. I've got parentheses here. You see those? Those are parentheses. I can type a parentheses, and I can do 4 plus 3, and I can close my parentheses. So does everyone agree that this is exactly what is written right here? Enter it then. What you get? You get 14. Your calculator does order of operations for you. It's a nice little trick. Try your order of operations and then double check it on your calculator. Okay? It does it for you. If you do not have one of these at home, I will attach the online version of this exact calculator in a Google link on the Google Classroom. I will attach a link to this online calculator, the TI-30XS, so that when you're doing your homework, if you don't have one of these at home, you have the online version. It has exact same interface as this. Everybody good? Okay. All right. So don't worry, because I know some of you are raising your hand probably to say, I don't have this calculator. You will at home. When you go to your Google Classroom, there will be a link to the calculator. You can click that and have it open in the background. Okay? All right. 8w minus 2x. W is equal to 5. X is equal to 3. So when I'm rewriting this problem, instead of it saying 8w, it's going to say what? 8 times 5. I had several kids today say 85. But remember, we learned yesterday or the day before that 8w, if you have them side by side, if you have a number and a variable side by side, or if you have two variables side by side, it means multiplication. This means 8 times w, which is our 5. We're going to replace the w with a 5. So we have 8 times 5. Okay? Then we're going to have minus 2 times what? 2 times 3. We're going to have it being 2 times 3. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight my x in blue. So I've got 2 times 3. Okay, and again, if I have to follow order of operations says that I need to do 8 times 5, and I need to do 2 times 3 first. What's 8 times 5? 40. What's 2 times 3? 6. Okay, and then I would subtract 40 minus the 6 is going to give me 34. That's going to give me 34. Okay, so we're following those order of operations. We're just following those order of operations for us. But again, if you were to type into your calculator 8 times 5 minus 2 times 3, you type it exactly as you see it, and then you hit enter. You get your 34. Okay? Use your calculator to double check. Use the calculator to double check. All right, we have 3 times c minus d. C is a negative 5. D is a positive 8. Okay, so we're going to replace everything that we see that has a c. We're going to replace that with a negative 5. Everywhere that we see the letter D, we're going to replace that with an 8. So that means I'm going to have 3 times the quantity of negative 5 minus, because I have a minus sign here, that minus sign comes down here, 8.
interruption, Ms. French-Zheng. Can I please get Ella linked to the counseling suite, please?
Yes, I'll send her in just a moment.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna do the parentheses first. -5 minus the 8. -5 minus the 8 is gonna give us -13. And then we would do 3 times -13, and that'll give us -39. What I want you guys to do is I want you to do problems 4, 5, and 6 on your own. And I'm going to write the answers right next to them. I'm going to put the answers next to them so that you can see whether you got it right or wrong when you work through it. Yes, Julie? You don't. You can do it all in pencil first. Do it all in pencil first because that's where you're practicing. So don't do pens, don't do colored pencils. Do it in pencil so that way if you make a mistake, you can fix it. So your answer, your final answer for number 4 should be a positive 76. I'm going to put that off to the side so that you know. The answer for number 5 is going to be a negative 13. So when you work through it, if you get negative 13, you got it right. And yeah, you can use your calculators for this, okay? Number 6, you should have gotten negative 19. So work through them. Work through them. Yeah. Okay, here I'm going to show the answers now. How it looks. This is what it looks like when you filled it in. So you already had the answers. You already had the 76, the negative 13, the negative 19. This is what it looks like. Shh, quiet. Shh, quiet. All you are doing, guys, is you are replacing the variable with the number that it says it's going to be. So instead of 4 times x, it's 4 times -3. Instead of 3 times y, it's 3 times 2. And like I said before, you can type this. Once you've replaced the variable with the number, you can type this in to your calculator. You can type this in, Nala and Melanie. All you have to do is type that into your calculator. It says -5. So I'm going to type -5. -5. Okay, and it's hard to see my little calculator here. -5. It's got a parentheses. I'm going to put a parentheses. It's got a 4. I'm going to put a 4. It's got an x, but I can't put an x. So what am I going to put? What is x? -3. Am I going to put 4 and then a -3? No, I'm going to put 4 times -3. I'm still inside the parentheses. I'm going to put -2. -2. Then close the parentheses. Close my parentheses. Then I've got +3. +3, and that's a times. And what's the y? Times 2. That's all you're going to do. You're going to type it in there. Typed it all in. Enter. Woo, 76. That's all you're going to do. You're going to go line by line. You're going to go, okay, here. Melanie, what's the first thing I'm going to put in my calculator? 2. Then I'm going to put what operation? Times. And what is my x? -4. So I'm going to put -4. Okay, 2 times -4. Then what am I going to put? Plus. Then what? Okay, then what? Times. Okay, and what am I timesing it by? What's the y value? What's the y? 5. So I'm going to put times 5. Okay. Then I'm going to put what? Plus. Then what? Can't put an x, so what am I putting instead of x? -4. I'm going to type -4 in there. There's my -4. And then it says xy. So that means x times y. So it's -4 times 5. Okay. Typed it all in. I'm just going term by term or value by value and typing it in and hit enter. There's my answer, -13. Let's look at the same one here. Hey, Nala, I'm doing this problem now, right? I'm going to do this one. But that's a fraction bar, so I need to hit my fraction bar first, don't I? Right? I need to hit that fraction bar. So I'm going to hit the fraction bar, and at the top of my fraction, what am I going to write? 2 times, good, and then what? Look at your problem. What's x equal? No, for number 6, what does x equal? Anyway, on number 6, what does it say x equals? 9. Okay, so we're going to have 2 times 9. Now I need to go to the bottom of my fraction, and I'm going to type a 3. Get out of my fraction. I'm going to put what? What operation is that, Nala? Plus, okay, instead of x times y, Nala, instead of x times y, what's the x? What's the x? Huh? 9. I'm going to put times, what's the y? Negative 2. So we're going to type a negative 2 into there. And then we're going to have a minus. So I'm going to type minus. And what's the w? 7. So we're going to type a 7. You're just going to go little by little, go down the whole thing and replace them in and hit enter. There's your negative 19. This is what it looks like, though, if you were to work it out step by step. But again, guys, I'm not testing you on order of operations. I'm testing or checking your understanding of substituting. IXL is not going to be as extensive as this. IXL is going to be more like these ones. Okay? IXL is going to be more like these first couple. Or it might even be simple as 4x. 4 times x. Okay? It'll be like that. This is more extensive. This was what I did with my other 2 classes. Okay? This is what we are going to be doing our IXLs on. Okay? Everybody good? Well, this will be online.